thank you for the introduction and thank you for coming after the coffee break. As you can see, I hold my presentation on Brochs, Built for Visibility. It's part of my master thesis, and I decided to kind of turn the usual approach on Brochs and visibility around a little bit and kind of watch the Brochs from within the landscape, not the landscape from atop the Broch. But first, let's kind of, check out what Brochs actually are. They are thick, roundish. They constitute of thick, roundish, dry stone walls, and are often using the technique of core building in their building. And they encompass features such as galleries. So there are ground galleried Brochs that are kind of constituting out of a double wall structure from the ground on, and there are solid-based Brochs, which may have some cells in their groundwork. Some of them have stairways, and some of them have scarsement ledges, which are used to construct multiple stories. And most of them have wall voids, which are used to actually help in not crumbling down because they are huge and made of stone, so they're pretty heavy. What you can see on the right is the best preserved Broch sample we have, which is Musa Broch and is on the Shetland Islands. Brochs can be found in Atlantic Scotland, mainly in the Highlands and the Islands, but some of them are also scattered around the lowlands, so these ones here. And they are built throughout the Iron Age, mostly the Middle Iron Age up until and into the late Iron Age. The ground plans of these buildings vary, as well as their classification. So you can see here I have some Brochs and some possible Brochs, which is actually the classification after Rickhams. There are other people classifying differently. And even the labeling varies. There is quite a lot of discussion about whether you should call them Brochs or you should stay at roundhouses, simple and complex roundhouses. But I guess I'll mostly stay with roundhouses because they are roundhouses in every case. What they share over all these dissimilarities is their appearance from the outside. They don't have windows. They only have really minimal doorways, and they look quite imposing. For my thesis, I decided on two areas that I wanted to study. One is in Caithness, and it's a very small area, so you won't even see it underneath the big one. And the other one is the lowlands, around the Forth Valley. I decided on these two samples because they're quite different. Caithness is right in the center of the Broch, and there's a very high density of Atlantic roundhouses. There's, especially in my sample, a long history of studies. The roundhouses occur in very close clusters, especially like the Keith. Brochs here are very close to each other. And there are so-called Broch villages, which are just stone structures that actually lean onto the Broch walls. The landscape is relatively flat. There is low vegetation now and back then. The environment is rough with winds and rain and all the more rough expressions you can have there. Then my lowland sample is kind of special in that these Brochs were used for only a very short duration of time. They emerge later on than any other roundhouses or Atlantic roundhouses. They develop in a very different settlement structure, and they are very close to the Antonin Wall, which is similar in time. My sample is right at the border to the Highlands, but still in the lowlands. The relief is very animated. There is a phase of deforestation which could be around the face of the building and the uses of the roundhouses I had a look at. I wanted to come at my studies with a little bit of theory, and was very happy to find that Renault performed her dissertation in 2009 and used these ranges that are written here, so up to 1.5 kilometers, which we heard in a talk before here, is kind of the distance where you can get gestures and really see people and what they are doing, so you can kind of perform in more personal connection. Then the middle ground is you can kind of get maybe the forms of humans and animals and see that something's moving there. And then you have kind of upwards from 4.5 kilometers, more a function of landmarks. I did only go up to 10 kilometers because my computer was really struggling. And with the farthermost range, like you only get maybe orientation from the landscapes. So Brochs would probably more get to be landscape features than personal connections. And this is actually what I did in my thesis. The absolute most important thing is probably the viewshed analysis, which I modeled a little bit after the Narcoins and Knitter book they published, with an observer elevation of my height about. And my target elevation is actually an increment between 0 and 10 meters, because I also wanted to have a look at maybe there's a sweet spot of height you need to have for a Broch to be really visible. And the max distance is 10 kilometers. All the other things I did are mainly for depiction and some things I did with the raster package. I performed all of these in R using grass for the viewsheds, but everything else is mainly the raster package. And later on I did some descriptive statistics to kind of be a bit better in my interpretation. What I got out of it is pictures like these. I have drawn the different radii here as well. This is Kaisbroch. On the left, you can see the zonal viewsheds based on the ERTS 89 DEM, so the EU DEMs. Without estimated sea areas. On the right, it's actually with estimated sea areas, which makes quite a lot of difference. And you can actually see this is a cumulative viewshed, so I added all the different viewsheds from 0 meters up to a height of 10 meters in these. So you would have a maximum number of 10 views per square. In the lowland sample, I did basically the same, and you can already see that the relief is very different. You have kind of unstructured little viewshed areas, whereas in Caithness you have more of big blocky type viewsheds. In the end, I did a cumulative viewsheds of all the cumulative viewsheds I performed to kind of get a little bit of a hint at maybe if there are some clusterings, which there are, but they are not very surprising. Here in Caithness, they are basically here, which is kind of these 3 case brochs that are very visible from the shoreline. And in the lowlands, we have a clustering where most of the brochs are, which is also not very surprising. In Caithness, you have actually some other possible brochs and brochs as the little crosses. In the lowlands, they are just too far away to even be within this 10-kilometer radius. If we now look at the estimated sea level, the focus shifts quite a bit. So the most brochs are visible now from the sea. And I will come a little bit to this later. I decided to do a little bit more of theory and have a look at the panoptic architecture that Foucault also describes. You can see an example here. It is, in the beginning, it was like a prison that Bentham constructed or wanted to construct, and that doesn't require physical punishment at all. It all bases on the feeling of being watched. So you have the watchtower in the middle, where there could be a watchman or watchwoman or not. And there are all the cells of the inmates, which are here. They are constructed in a way that the light shines through from the outside. So from the watchtower, you can see every inmate, whatever they do. They can't see each other. They are totally isolated. And they even can't see if there's a watchman present or not. But just this feeling of being watched and maybe being watched doing something bad and having to cope with the consequences leads to a disciplining of the self in these inmates. There's no need for actual surveillance. There might even not really be a need for human surveillance, which you can kind of see in the watching eye effect. There have been some studies in the recent years on stylized eyes that are represented in some social experiments. And when they are present, people tend to behave more socially acceptable, even if they are very stylized and you don't really get that there's somebody watching. So if the broch or another building actually stands for an entity, you can maybe get to the point that these buildings form the pinnacle of and conformity. They promote conformity within the social rules that are specific to an in-group or an out-group, which are kind of geometrical to each other. Now towards the statistics I performed. You can see kind of, I hope you can see, you can see the actual percentage of the maximum possible value of visibility for each sample point. On the left, on the left of both graphs, you can see the Caithness, and on the right, the lowland sample. And on the left, you have without the sea levels, on the right with the sea levels. What really surprised me, that with the sea levels, you get roughly the same mean values. But we have kind of 2 outliers. Those are both on promontories, and with my DEM, they kind of fall in between like the cliffs and are not very visible. And you always have to keep in mind, I have a 10-kilometer radius, and I don't know whether anybody in the Iron Age would have been that far in seafaring to actually cruise in Caithness sea type. To answer the first question I had in my title, whether Brochs actually are built for visibility, I have to answer probably not. Not really. If you look at the mean values and even the maximum values, in the near sample, you're always round about 50%, which is not very surprising because you're quite near to the Brochs. And then you go down to, probably about 30%, and even further down in the far sample to about 20%. I would have imagined that Brochs are quite a lot more visible from the literature that always portrays them as being these rather astounding big figures of the Iron Age. So thank you for your attention, and you're welcome to ask me questions.